every single person that's getting ready for the transition to have a journal or, reserve part of your personal journal for the transition space to write things down, use it as an opportunity to think out loud. I really encourage you to use that. I talked earlier about self-reflection. There are so many exercises. Our books have so many exercises that highlight things that you can go through. Every single one of the exercises that are in there, they're all good. Some are much more powerful than others, but document those in your journal. And I encourage you to use that specifically for your transition, and to be able to think out loud and help process things.
Welcome to the Seven Eagle Group podcast, your home for inspiring stories, valuable tips, and great advice from hard-charging veterans so you can lead a more rewarding and lucrative post-military career.
All right. Hey, everybody. It is Jordy and Bailey from Seven Eagle Group. I'm so excited today to talk to a friend and a guy I've known for a long time in this space and just doing absolutely incredible work to help our military veterans transition into their civilian careers. So this is Brian, spent 26 years in the Air Force as an officer, worked in Fortune 500 companies, just as much, whatever you think of a data analytics whiz, this is the guy. You'll see his name in his picture in the dictionary under that. So just an unbelievably smart and unbelievably smart guy who has spent so much time just researching what this transition is like and what it means and what works and what doesn't work. So super excited to have a chat with you today, Brian, and thank you for spending some time with me and Bailey.
Jordy, first of all, thank you very much for that intro. That was honoring. Thank you very much. I think you might have embellished just a little bit, but I'll start by saying thanks for allowing me to be on your podcast. I think the world of what you're doing, and honored to share some insights and thoughts here, today.
Outstanding. And he just published a book, which we're going to get into. It as an audio book as well to accompany. But let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your childhood. Where'd you grow up? What made you decide to join the force?
Absolutely, Jordy. So I'm a native of Northwest Ohio, a little city, Findlay, Ohio. In fact, very patriotic. It's called Flag City, USA. And growing up there, obviously, I felt the need to serve, and so that led me to the Air Force Academy. So I went to the United States Air Force Academy, graduated with a class of 1990, and I came out on active duty. I served on active duty for 6 years. I was an intelligence officer. Had assignments in Alaska and at Nebraska. I love to tell folks that all you do as an intel officer is that you take data and information and you put it into context for a decision. Tactical decision, a target you're going to strike, strategic decision, something that relates to national security. So I did that for 6 years, and then I left, and I went on to corporate America, and that's what brought us here to the great city of Cincinnati. I worked for Procter and Gamble. What I learned is that industry does the same exact thing. They take data and information, they put it into context. I was on a big brand team, and my job was to do business intelligence, right? I was to understand the marketplace, collect data, and help shape that so we could make decisions. So very, very similar to making decisions from a national security standpoint. And while I was there, I obviously had the chance to recruit fellow veterans, and I learned that they all ask the same types of questions. They ask, "What does someone like me, with my education, skills, experience, do in the civilian world? Do they like it? Are they happy? What lessons did they learn that I can apply to my transition?" And so we took that same mindset and we thought that there was a need for service members to have the same level of fidelity on intelligence that we do for national security and for business. And so we created interactive data dashboards where you can put in your branch, rank, years of service, age, specialty, and it gives you data that's aligned to your unique profile. Again, they ask the same questions, but they want to know for people that align to their profile. So that's where it all started when we collected all this data and created dashboards, one for service members, one for military spouses. We took all that data and we started mining it, and we started finding these consistent themes and what we call transition truths. And then also we came up with the best practices that have all this is then turned into to books that we now have available free of charge on the website. There's 8 total, and as you mentioned, so we turned one of them into an audio book and just published that last week. And we're working now on a number of other audio books and also working on the comprehensive military to civilian transition handbook that we'll be publishing next year.
That is amazing. And what I love so much about you, and what you guys do at militarytransition.org is like everything is free for everything. You're just doing this to help the community. And it's such incredible research and how in depth you go on all this stuff. And you're just doing it to make it a little easier for people who are jumping into this stressful and confusing time in their lives, right?
It is, yeah. So we're fully committed that everything we do will always be free to service members, veterans, spouses, and we truly believe in it. And this is our way to be able to give back.
That's awesome. So I invited Bailey to join us today because she's transitioning herself out of the service. She's doing her SkillBridge internship with us here at Seven Eagle, but I wanted her to be able to ask you some questions as well because she's living this. She's going
All
through it.
right.
Bailey, fire away.
So I did about 6, 7 years in the Air Force and I went the enlisted route. So, what was one of the biggest things you learned from being in the military, leadership wise, the way the military grows? I mean, you did it, a while ago. I joined in 18. And so,
Okay.
yeah. And then, getting out obviously in 24. So I just wanted to know what one of the biggest life lessons you learned while being in the military.
Happy to answer, but Bailey, really quick. So, Air Force, what did you do in the Air Force?
So I was a personnelist. So
A
I worked,
personnelist.
yes. So I was at Ramstein was my first base, and then we went to Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico, and so it was a big difference in how we rolled in Germany versus in the States. But yeah, so I worked in the MPF for about a year, and then I worked at headquarters USAFE, that CSS there, and then I went and worked at a CSS in a maintenance squadron.
Good for you. Well, thank you for your service. And I can just see the way you describe it, you're passionate about that time and passionate to take those skills out into industry. So
Mhm.
thank you. Thank you. So your question is, what were some of the most important lessons?
Mhm.
Interacting with people, the ability to interact with people, the ability to lead people, was one of the biggest things that I took away from my time on active duty. And one of the things that I tell transitioning service members is that people are people. It doesn't matter if they're wearing a uniform or they're wearing a civilian attire. People are people, and what motivates them, what inspires them in uniform, are the same things that inspire them in corporate America. They might use a little bit different language, they might dress differently, but being a leader is about setting that vision and motivating people to reach that vision. And it's the same thing in and out of uniform. That's probably the biggest lesson that I learned. I can't thank the Air Force. I can't thank the government enough for all the lessons they share, but that's probably one of the largest. And then also just the passion for data analytics and what I call, transition intelligence now. So I started doing intelligence for national security. I took that out into corporate space, doing business intelligence, market research, and now we provide transition intelligence. So there you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you.
Great
Thanks. Thank,
experience.
Yeah.
thank you, Bailey. So when did your like love of analytics and marketing, when did that start? Before the service, after, while you were in, and you got out?
So I think it actually started at the academy. I really enjoyed doing it. But then the tools that you had were nowhere near what they are today.
Yeah, yeah.
So it started then, and then when I was in corporate America, obviously I had some really sophisticated tools that you couldn't get as a private citizen. You're trying to buy those at home. So the idea to actually collect this data and run surveys similar to what they do in industry was not new. And so I built all these surveys, but it was not cost effective for a single individual, at home to be able to
Yeah.
do it. And then about 10 years ago, a lot of the capabilities became very cost effective. And so the ability to collect that data the way they do in industry, and then also the ability to share that. So it really, the deal was sealed when I first observed a interactive data dashboard called Tableau. As soon as I
Mhm.
saw Tableau and this capability called Tableau Public, when I saw that as available, I thought, okay, now's the time. We've collected all this data. It is time to share it all. So that's what gave rise to the data dashboards. And there is still nothing that rivals what we provide in those interactive data dashboards. So I'm super happy about that. It started
Yeah.
with the data dashboard for service members. The data is from veterans, but then we also came up with one for military spouses to help
Yeah.
them overcome employment challenges. So there you go. There you go.
I love too that you didn't forget about the spouses. I mean, they deserve our support as much as the folks who do serve. So
Absolutely. And
thank
I
you
will
for
say,
including them. Yeah.
no, I appreciate that, but I also say that from a industry standpoint, when you're looking for talent, military spouses are a huge talent
Oh
pool
my
as
gosh.
well. And so industry has some parts of the industry have recognized that. And especially with the ability for remote work, I will tell you,
Yeah.
there's just so much talent across the military spouse community. And even though they're moving around, they might go from Ramstein Air Force Base to Cannon Air Force Base. They have the same amazing skills, and they can
Right.
be hugely valued members of your team no matter where they're at around the globe.
No doubt. Definitely on tap. No doubt. Bailey, you got another question for Bry?
I do. I mean, you're doing great work, it sounds like, on the outside, but outside of the military. But what made you decide to make that decision to transition out of the military?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, so the timing was different than what we experienced today. So my dad was in corporate America. He fully supported my entrance in the Air Force Academy and the things that I did, but he also encouraged me to take those skills that I had acquired and take them out into industry. And so he encouraged me to not only go out in industry, but to go out and to get an MBA. So I left largely because at that point too, this is the mid 1990s. When I went to the academy, when I started the academy, there was still the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall came down while I was at the academy, and there was no more communism, so we had rid the world of that. And so there was a tremendous peace dividend. The first Gulf War was over, and so a lot of people were going to try something different. And so, with the coaching of my father, I decided to get out, and then also he coached me into doing an MBA program. So I went to University of Notre Dame, picked up an MBA, and also then reinforced that interest that I had in data analytics, and actually wrote a business plan when I was at Notre Dame around helping service members. And again, the emphasis was to do this in a cost-effective way so that we could deliver everything free of charge to service members, veterans, and their families.
It's
Oh,
so
awesome. Thank you.
so incredible. What So anyone listening, please check out military-transition.org. So much content. It's unbelievable. You can find anything under the sun about this topic. But can you share, Bry, some of your, and please get his books, watch the audio book online, but can you sum up some of your favorite tips for service members over the years? What are like the
Absolutely.
surefire things that someone should pay attention
Yeah.
to?
Jordy, that's a kind of a loaded question because
Yeah.
I could probably talk for the next 2 to 3 hours about that alone. So I will break it
Yeah.
down to the simplest answer I can provide on that. And I also say, so you mentioned the books. I'm thinking you can see it here. So here's
Yep.
two of them. The first book that we launched was called Truths About the Military Transition, and it's 10 facts that every service member needs to understand the day they put the uniform on, because decisions you make in uniform will impact your future life. What you do, and your standard of living, the things that you experience. So that was our first book. But then our most recent book, Navigating the Military Transition, in this book, we really focus in on what are the 5 best practices. So I could talk for hours, but I will highlight just the 5 best practices that we provide the highlights. And this book also references all the other guidebooks that are available. There are 8 total. Here are the 5 best practices when you survey thousands of veterans, and I can give you the data behind all this as well. In fact, we also have all kinds of flyers that we put out
Yeah.
that have the data and information on it. You'll see these everywhere. I mean, you're going to see these in a bunch of different places. Um, So the first best practice is to start your transition early. And I actually say, I mentioned earlier the decisions you make in uniform are going to impact your future life. But really, the minute you take the oath, you ought to be thinking about what's next. That doesn't mean you're going to take the uniform off after 4 years. And in fact, that's a very personal decision. You might go for 30 years, but regardless, you need to think about what's next. And so that starts with, starting as early as possible so that options. There are three groups to go through the transition, and we put data behind it, and we highlight this in our several guidebooks, but we really drive it home in the last, the one that's now into an audiobook, Navigating the Military Transition. There is a group that enters, they're completely unprepared for the complete unknown. It's this transition ambush. It's terrible. And we're really trying to help that group the most. So those that are completely unprepared for the complete unknown, folks that do some preparation actually enter the somewhat unknown and the level of unknown based upon their prep. And then there's this group that enters the unfamiliar. So they have skills that translate really easy for a number of reasons. And so there's the three groups. We tell everybody to start as early as possible. Second one is to have a transition plan. And it starts with self-reflection. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of self-reflection. There are a lot of service members that just want to jump in and start writing resumes. And I tell them, you're going to invest the same amount of time to figure it out, whether you're doing that while still wearing the uniform or if you do that after you have made the transition. And if you learn those lessons after you transition, the cost is significantly higher. So start early, have that plan. Self-reflection is the foundation of it, and it's really, really important. Part of your plan also is to start building your network, which is the third best practice. The most recommended aspect of a successful transition. In fact, 86% of veterans say that networking or build your network is really important. There's lots of great tools that are out there. Obviously, Jordy, you and I are connected on LinkedIn. I think it's how we first connected. LinkedIn is a fantastic tool, but it's just that. It's just a tool. Real networking is interacting with people. And I love organizations like ACP, American Corporate Partners. They help you find mentors that can help you. Third best practice is build your network. And building your network also helps with the fourth best practice, and that is to learn how to translate your skills. This is probably the most difficult aspect of a successful transition. It takes time and energy, and the network that you build can help you with that, right? So you have your hard skills, as an intel officer, so the ability to understand data, information, put it into context for a decision. But then there's all these soft skills, communication skills, interpersonal skills, leadership, conflict resolution. So learning how to translate those skills is best practice number four. And then best practice number five is being patient and persistent. You didn't become a highly trained warrior overnight, and you're not going to become a civilian overnight. An effective, a mission successful civilian overnight. It takes time, and so it goes back to those things like having a transition plan that plan's going to evolve as you progress. But there's lots of things that go into being patient, persistent that you need to have, and we highlight all those in our transition guidebook. So I could talk for hours alone on those
All
five
right.
things.
Those are the
There's
highlights, though. No, I
there's the
love it.
absolute highlights, and there's
Yeah.
data behind all those, and all that data is available on the website.
Yeah. And like I said, he just launched an audio book. It's on YouTube. Just search military transition. You'll see it.
Uh,
Um,
Title Navigating the Military Transition, and yeah, it's
we'll
about
put the
30
link in.
minutes long, and
Yeah.
it was really hard to get it down to 30 minutes, I will
I
tell you.
bet. I bet. But it was good. You made it so user friendly. It's just easy little snippets of advice that you can follow. But I can't stress this enough. I mean, you're talking right now to somebody, or you're listening to someone who is, I would doubt there's anybody who knows more about the transition out there than you do, Brian. You've been studying it for so long, and you know all this data behind what's effective and what's not, and what are best practices. And this is not difficult to do, but somebody, you just got to pay attention. You can't just expect like you're going to transition without having put the work in ahead of time.
Really, really important. Agreed. Agreed.
Makes all the difference when you do that prep work. And even the first one you said, like, I think the first tip was find your path, or what's gonna, what do you want to do? I mean,
Yeah.
if you just jump into a career and you head down the wrong path and you're there 5, 10 years, you're like, oh, I really wanted to own a restaurant. Why didn't I go that way instead of this way? And, you
Jordy, I'll
know,
highlight one thing too. And Bailey, I'd like to bring you into this part of the conversation because you're in Skillbridge right now. I will tell you,
Mhm.
when I first started, when I transitioned, there was no such thing as Skillbridge. There was not even TAP, right? So I'm thankful that we had the transition assistance program today. Didn't exist when I first transitioned. And I think that the Skillbridge program is the absolute best program going. There's
Yep.
so many things that Skillbridge covers. It helps you get that transition plan. It helps you start early. It is a great way to build your network. So I'm a huge fan. And so, Bailey, I want to ask you, tell us about your SkillBridge experience. Tell us what's been helpful and things that you've learned that you didn't anticipate.
Oh, well, thank you, Brian. I don't know if I'm the best candidate to ask that question to. I just started last Monday.
Okay, all right.
I'm fresh out, but I have already learned how to navigate, LinkedIn as a tool to network with people on there and get, people, in my pool of, whether it's looking at my resumes and growing that or growing my connection list and things like that. But yeah, just talking to people, and I'm more familiar with Zoom than I ever have been. Definitely, because I know that when I was looking at transitioning out, I was very iffy on doing remote because I was like, no way, I'm a people person. I like to be, head on, but definitely these 2 weeks have definitely changed my mind about that. So
Good for you. Good for you. Learn as much as you can during the SkillBridge program.
yes,
And you talked about networking and LinkedIn. Use that to the full extent possible. The job that you're looking for is available through your network, right? So there are so many jobs that are out there on job boards, but that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for some connection that your network is going to help you find something that is aligned to your unique needs and desires, and SkillBridge gives you a great chance to really figure out what those truly are.
yeah. Tell him, Bailey, I love Brian, what we were talking about this morning, like how she has an interest in health food. Tell him how we're looking at that now as a potential career for.
yeah. So I'm looking into, like, I've been on this path of just trying to see what I really incorporate into my diet and like what I put in my body. And because since coming back to America, I've had a lot of issues with gut, and I've had to do a lot of research on, what's processed, what's not, what's in the ingredients and what's not. And so yeah, so I'm gonna dive deep into learning a totally different thing. I had no idea that I could even think of doing. So yeah, it's been.
So she's because she has an interest in healthy eating and stuff. So she's gonna now start interviewing folks, like networking with interviewing other veterans working in that space for maybe
Yep.
potential career opportunities for herself,
Yeah.
Bailey, that is a really awesome area of interest that you can really make a career out of, because that's not only a career that's going to help you, but that's a career that can help so many other people. There are so many challenges with the American diet. I could talk more about that. It sounds like you're clearly aware of
Yeah.
some of the challenges that we have,
Mhm.
and a lot of it's just general awareness that people aren't aware of the things that they're consuming, making assumptions that things are healthy when they really might not be.
Yeah.
And so there is so much goodness that can come out of that, not just for you, it's an interest, but the ideal job is something that you're passionate about. And it helps you, it helps others, but also, giving you an income. So I think that's fantastic. Good for you, and I highly encourage you to pursue that.
Thank
yeah.
you so much.
So Brian, I can't thank you enough for this, man. I don't want to I want to encourage everyone, please go check out. We'll put the links, we'll put his books on there. Check them out. Go to his page. You will be absolutely blown away at the amount of content and how good it is and the advice, all the recommendations. And he will get you on a faster career track than the one you are on now if you can just follow some of his advice and guidance and learn from the mistakes that others have made before us. It's so valuable to have that info because you study all the data, you study the numbers. It's not guesswork. This is based on all facts, right?
Absolutely, Jory. This isn't just the data that we've collected. This is all also 2 decades of helping fellow service members. And so, as we come to a close, I'm going to throw out one piece of advice, but I'm actually going to give it to Bailey, and I'm going to say I will ask you the question of, do you have a journal? Do you have a transition journal right now?
I do not have a transition journal, but I do have a journal.
Okay, all right. That is fantastic that you have a journal, and so you're familiar with the practice. So you're thinking out loud, right? You're capturing thoughts that 2 weeks later, there's so many things that fly through my mind that if I don't write it down, I'm going to forget it in,
Yeah.
2 minutes, let alone 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So you're already familiar with the practice of journaling, but I tell every single person that's getting ready for the transition to have a journal or, reserve part of your personal journal for the transition space to write things down, use it as an opportunity to think out loud. Bailey, you are a step ahead of everybody else, the very fact that you have the journal, but I really encourage you to use that. I talked earlier about self-reflection. There are so many exercises. Our books have so many exercises that highlight things that you can go through. Some I've done every single one of the journals that are in, or every single one of the exercises that are in there. They're all good. Some are much more powerful than others, but document those in your journal. And Bailey, I commend you for having that, and I encourage you to use that specifically for your transition, to be able to think out loud and help process things.
I will. Thank you, Brian.
You bet.
Brian, you are amazing, man. I'm so glad to call you a friend, and I've learned so much from you over my last decade of being in this space, and I am just so impressed at how you do this every day. You just doing it out of the goodness of your heart to help your community, and that means so much to me and to others. So thank you for the enormous impact you are making.
Likewise, Jordy, thank you for everything that you're doing, and I look forward to keeping the dialogue going here.
You got it, buddy. Thanks again.
Take
Take care.
care.
Thanks, Bill.